So I think most people these days who own a four-wheel drive are constantly online, scouring the forums, checking out Facebook pages, looking at what everyone else is doing to their rigs, looking at what they should do to their rigs. It's like a constant thing that occurs in our four-wheel drive industry. In the 200 Series Landcruiser world, this is no different. The three most common questions that I see being asked online are, what size tyres can I run with a 2-inch lift? Or what's the best aftermarket airbox I can get? And the third question is what we're here to address today, and that is, what is the best torque converter lockup kit that you can get for a 200 Series Landcruiser? So to answer this question, first of all, we need to look at what a torque converter is and what it does in your car. And that's why we're here at Power Curve Performance with Pat today. And he is going to hopefully answer very simply for us what a torque converter does in our gearbox of a 200 Series Landcruiser, or all automatic gearboxes?
All automatics, yes.
All automatic gearboxes.
All right, thanks Troy. So in an automatic you have a torque converter. So a torque converter is similar to a clutch. However, there is no physical connection between the engine and the gearbox while the torque converter is in function. So it uses a fluid coupling, which generates a lot of heat. So a torque converter lockup essentially eliminates that slip and applies direct drive from the engine to the gearbox. So it eliminates the torque converter altogether, thus reducing the heat.
Simple explanation. That's good. You nailed that.
That's what you wanted.
That's perfect. So now that we've got that explanation out of the way, just a couple of questions that I have about a torque converter, Pat. If you have that lockup engaged, or if that clutch is engaged and you come to a complete stop, what would happen?
Your engine would stall.
So it's kind of like stopping with your manual car in first gear without putting the clutch in, is that correct?
Exactly.
And with the slippage that you talked about, does that mean that the engine RPM is kind of higher than what your wheels are spinning at, your wheel RPM?
In theory, yes. So when your lockup engages, a lot of people say they feel their gear change a lot in a 200 series. Okay. It may not necessarily be the gear change, it might be the lockup clicking in and out. So when you install a lockup kit, you'll find that that change doesn't happen as much. So it's generally about 200 to 400 RPM. Yep. Depends on how much load you have on your engine, but that slip is what you feel sort of feels like a gear change, I guess.
So a common thing that I see 200 Series Landcruiser owners ask and query about is when they're on the highway, they feel like the car is constantly hunting for gears. Yes. But that could just be the ECU in the car engaging and disengaging the lockup automatically.
And the way the lockup kit works in a 200 is it's not on or off. It can be a variation of on or off with the pulse width modulation.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why it will feel funny sometimes, like it's not in a gear, or it wants to be in a gear, or it's hunting or looking for a different gear. Okay,
that explains it really well. So the way to get around this kind of slippage and heat and the hunting for gears that I was talking about is to install a lockup kit in your car. So a lockup kit effectively eliminates the slippage, eliminates the heat, reduces your engine RPM, so it is kind of using a little bit less fuel.
Yeah. It can. It's not always the case, but yes, definitely it can use less fuel. Okay. Normally we see a reduction in fuel after a lockup kit's been fitted, yes.
Okay. And the most important thing with a lockup kit doing all these functions is that you have a good and reliable lockup kit, right?
Yes, correct.
You don't want something that's going to be destroying your gearbox in the meantime.
No. Okay. You don't want to be bringing engine lights on and stuff like that.
So that brings us to the lockup kit that I have in my 200 Series Landcruiser, and the lockup kit that Pat and the team here at Power Curve recommend and install in every car that needs a lockup kit is the Stocklock Lockup Torque Converter Kit. It's a tongue twister, if I've ever heard of it.
Torque Converter Control Module.
Torque Converter Control Module. And it all fits in this little box, but it's recommended that you get a professional to install it, right? Like it's a bit...
Yeah, you could do it yourself. It can be a little bit time consuming, especially cutting into ECU wires and stuff like that. It's quite easy to do, but yeah, if you're not fluent with that sort of thing, then I'd recommend you get somebody to do it for sure.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thanks Pat. We're going to go out and drive the car now and show you guys how the lockup kit works in situ and when the best times to use it are.
No worries. Thank you.
Ta. So now we're in the car. Let's take a look at when is the appropriate time to use a Stocklock lockup kit. The lockup kit that I have in my 200 series is the dual speed. So it has an auto speed function and a low speed function. When auto is engaged, the lockup clicks in at about 90, 92 kilometers an hour, and then it disengages at about 85 kilometers an hour. When you have the low speed button put on, it engages at about 40 kilometers an hour and disengages at around 38 kilometers an hour. So for everyday driving, I drive around with the auto button pushed in, so the stock lock engages at around 90, 92 and disengages at around 85 k's an hour. And that really is perfect for everyday driving. Whether I'm towing, whether I'm off-road on the sand, whether I'm just driving down the highway, it doesn't matter. The stock lock operates in automatic mode like you wouldn't even know it's there. It just stops that hunting for gears that we were referring to earlier, stops the slippage of the torque converter. So there's only a couple of instances where I would use the low speed function of the stock lock, and it's not very often, to be honest, that I do use it. It's really when the car is under a lot of load and you're doing between 40 and 90 kilometers an hour. Now, there are a couple of rules that I follow when I put the car into the low speed lockup mode. And the first one is put it into manual gear select. That's really, really important, because the second rule is that you want to keep your engine RPM above 1500. If you have your engine drop below 1500 RPM, the issue is it will put a lot of load on your drivetrain. The car will start to shudder. It's like driving a manual car being in fifth gear trying to do 20 kilometers an hour. It's not good at all. So right now I'm coming up to a little bit of a hill. Normally, if I'm not towing, I wouldn't worry about this, but just to show you, if I was towing something, right now the first thing I would do is flick the car over into manual gear select, knock it down a gear just to bring those engine RPMs up, and then click the low speed button in. And the car is sitting at 1600 RPM. We're in third gear. I'm doing 50 kilometers an hour, and we're just gonna cruise up this hill. So the advantage right now, especially if you're towing, is by locking the torque converter up, I'm getting maximum torque to my rear wheels, and I am creating no heat, no slippage in the gearbox. It just makes the car's job a lot easier to cruise up the hill, especially if I'm towing a lot of weight, as I said. So just as another example of when I might use the low speed lockup would be driving in soft sand. If I'm driving in soft sand and it's not quite soft enough to be in low range for, but it's soft enough to stop me from going, 80, 90 kilometers an hour, that's the best time to use a lockup kit as well, even when you're not towing. The sand is putting increased load on your car. You'll feel your car shifting and hunting for gears constantly. The best thing you can do is pull the car into manual gear select third or fourth gear, throw this lockup kit into low speed function, and you'll find that the car will drive a lot better on the sand because you're getting more torque to your wheels and you're really reducing the stress on your drivetrain and reducing any heat. So I guess the big question is, why have I chosen to go with a Stocklock torque converter lockup kit for my 200? Because there are a few other options on the market. Now, a big reason was because PowerCurve, who I really trust, recommended the product to me. But the second reason was I did my own research and found that this Stocklock unit is the only one that uses PWM to lock up the torque converter kit. Now, PWM, for those of you who don't know, is called pulse width modulation. It is kind of, in simple terms, a language. So the Stocklock unit uses the same language as the standard Toyota ECU to control the lockup clutch in the torque converter. Now, as far as I know, Stocklock is the only one that uses this same PWM language as the standard Toyota ECU. The other lockup kits that are on the market just use something different to control it. I've never ever had an issue with the Stocklock kit in this car. It's never thrown codes. I've never had any issues with it whatsoever. I've got a few friends that have 200 series and they all also have Stocklock kits, and none of them have had any issues to date either. Now, again, this isn't a paid advertisement or anything like that. I have had this Stocklock kit in my car now for about 3.5 years and I have never had a problem. So I can highly recommend this lockup kit to anyone that is looking for a good lockup kit for their 200 series or Prado, or I think they might even do Hiluxes now as well. So that about wraps it up. A quick little short video on the Stocklock automatic lockup kit for my 200. If you have any queries or questions or any tips and tricks for me, please throw them down into the comments below, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.